Finally, the burden is gone. Starting today, my parents are moving in with me.
My husband, Michael, said that to me as I stood in shock in front of the demolished house right after my parents had passed away. What are you talking about?
Are you losing your mind? Hurry up and bring the inheritance to our place.
I couldn't help but laugh at his words. I see, so that's what this is all about.
What? Why are you laughing?
You really don't know, do you?
Know what?
Michael and his parents stared at me suspiciously as I burst out laughing. And then I told the three of them the truth. My name is Michelle. I was born as the eldest daughter to regular middle class parents. I have one older brother, Charles, and we grew up in a pretty normal family. When I was 29, I married my husband, Michael, and we have two kids. Balancing work and raising kids was tough, and before I knew it, I was already 55. Our eldest son, Samuel, and our daughter, Anna, are both adults now and working full-time jobs. They each live on their own, trying to adjust to their new lives. Now, I thought I'd finally have some quiet time with my husband. Life had been pretty ordinary, but I was happy. I figured we'd continue to grow old like this. But one winter day, everything changed. My dad was in a car accident and passed away suddenly. He was only 72. We were all devastated by his sudden loss, especially my mom, who was so heartbroken that she could barely eat. Mom, I know you're sad, but you have to eat something. I kept reminding her over and over.
I know, but I just don't have an appetite. It feels like there's a weight on my chest.
My brother and I figured it was just the emotional toll on her, so we kept an eye on her for a while. However, in just about 2 weeks, my mother's weight started dropping rapidly. Realizing something was seriously wrong, I took her to the hospital. What? Cancer? I was stunned when the doctor told me her diagnosis. It was already too advanced for surgery, and they estimated she had about a year left. I hadn't even had the chance to properly repay her for everything. I had just lost my dad, and now this with my mom. I was even more devastated than when my dad passed away. But I didn't have time to stay sad forever. My brother lived far away, so I couldn't rely on him. That left me as the only one who could take care of her. I immediately told Michael that I wanted my mom to move in with us. I couldn't leave her alone, not in her condition, emotionally or physically. But Michael's response was not what I expected.
Seriously, we just had the funeral, and now you're still going to be dragged around by your parents?
He sighed in annoyance. You don't have to say it like that.
Just drive her to and from the hospital. Why do we need to live together?
She must be feeling lonely. If it's too much, how about I live with her at the old house for a while? I suggested. Michael got furious.
What? And what am I supposed to do for food while you're gone?
I'll still come over and cook, of course.
Who's going to do the cleaning? The laundry? Who's going to take care of that?
I fell silent. I planned to do what I could, but I knew I wouldn't be able to manage everything like before. He hit me where it hurt. If he said I was being selfish for wanting to help and care for my mom, I wouldn't have a response. Mom would probably insist that things could stay the same as they were, but I really wanted to take care of her.
Fine, but I'm not helping with anything at all.
Michael said grudgingly, noticing my silence. His tone was arrogant, but he was caving in after all. I'm sorry, thank you. As awful as his attitude was, the fact that he agreed was still something. I swallowed my pride and thanked him. After that little scuffle, Michael and I began living with my mom in my childhood home. We had been living in a company-owned apartment provided by Michael's job. Michael was an only child. His father, John, had been pushing for us to live with him, so we hadn't planned to buy our own house yet. Living in the company apartment was convenient for his commute, and the rent was only about $300 a month, so it wasn't a huge financial burden. But now, with the move to my family's home, we no longer had to pay that, and the house was bigger. So living with my mom wasn't entirely a downside for Michael. True to his word, Michael didn't help out with anything, but I was still glad to be living with my mom. She seemed healthy, but often felt weak and spent much of the day resting. I prepared her meals, made sure she ate, and got her medicine ready. There's no way she could have done all that on her own.
I'm so sorry, Michelle. Thank you. I'm so grateful to have you with me. I should thank Michael too.
Mom kept expressing her gratitude to both of us. Of course, I didn't tell her about the harsh words Michael had said about moving in, so she was still thankful to him. One evening, after Mom had gone to bed, Michael came home. As I served him dinner, I brought up something about Mom's treatment. But Michael glared at me.
I don't care. I told you I'm not helping with anything.
He refused to even listen. I wanted to vent to someone or talk about what was on my mind. All I wanted was for Michael to just listen. But after a month, then two, his attitude never changed. He kept grumbling about living with my mom, acting as if he was some kind of saint for agreeing to it. And it just got worse day by day. But what could I say? I was stressed out, worrying about my mom and trying to keep Michael happy. When the year passed, as the doctors had predicted, my mom's condition suddenly worsened and she was hospitalized. 3 days later, she passed away. Even though I had been mentally preparing for it, I was still devastated. My brother, his family, and my kids rushed over to help. But at a time like this, I wanted my husband by my side. And yet, there was Michael, laughing with his parents in the corner and not lifting a finger to help with the funeral. My brother took on the role of leading the ceremony, and we managed to get everything in order. But Michael, who should have been sitting in the family section, was sitting in the back row of the relative seats. "I want you to sit with the family, Michael," I said to him, and he replied,
Nah, I'm fine here. It's not like I'm blood related or anything.
"But you're my husband." Then Michael's mother, Catherine, who had been listening from the side, chimed in.
He's your husband, but he's not your mom's son, right? Michael is my son, so he's a stranger, a stranger.
Exactly. We're Michael's only family. You can sit in the family section, Michelle.
With both of Michael's parents agreeing, I couldn't say anything more. While customs vary by region, in this area where we live, it's common for a son-in-law to sit with the immediate family. As expected, since Michael wasn't in the family section, distant relatives started whispering, "Did they get divorced or something?" I couldn't believe people were actually gossiping like that, but it wouldn't have happened if Michael had just sat where he was supposed to. Though I was a bit annoyed at him for not sitting beside me, we were able to send my mom off without any further issues. After the funeral, we returned to the house with my brother's family, my kids, Michael, and his parents. "Thank you, John, Catherine, for coming today, even though you're so busy." I thanked my in-laws and offered them drinks. They laughed and said,
Yeah, really. First, your dad passed, and now your mom. It's been one thing after another for us, too.
But at least now it's all over.
I froze for a moment. What kind of person would say something like that? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I forced a smile and walked away. As I stepped away, I overheard John, Catherine, and Michael talking.
It must have been tough, Michael, living with someone else.
Yeah, I'm fed up with Michelle's selfishness.
Remember, as her husband, you don't have to go along with everything she says. In marriage, it's important to say no to things you don't like.
I clenched my fists. The sound of the three of them laughing together was unbearable, but this was nothing new. Michael's parents had always been insensitive and rude. When I was about to marry Michael, Catherine had said,
Wasn't there a prettier girl you could have found? I don't think I can expect to see cute grandkids.
They say beauty fades in 3 days, but with Michelle, you'll never get tired of her.
Michael laughed at John's comment, saying, "That's funny." That's just the kind of disrespectful people they were. Something snapped inside me. Looking back, neither Michael nor his parents had ever shown me an ounce of concern, whether at my dad's funeral or after my mom passed away. Instead, they just kept making condescending remarks. I felt guilty about forcing Michael to live with my mom, but now I wondered if I should have been questioning his behavior all along. All I wanted was to take care of my mom, but I had bent over backward trying to accommodate Michael's feelings. If he had supported me, it would have been different, but that was never the case. There was absolutely no reason for me to feel this guilty toward Michael. As anger simmered inside me, the three of them continued laughing and chatting like nothing was wrong. If my brother's family or the kids had heard it, they would have been upset, but luckily they were all in the kitchen. Michael and his parents were in a different room, so I was the only one who overheard the conversation, and I was relieved by that. As I was thinking about all this, Catherine's voice interrupted my thoughts again.
Michelle,
"Yes." I snapped back to reality and responded.
would it be all right if I took this?
Catherine was holding my mom's purse. I was so shocked that I stammered, I. Catherine continued.
Your mom can't use it anymore, right? Michael said I could take it home. I think I will.
She waved the purse in the air, examining it as if she were appraising it. The funeral had just ended, and this was beyond disrespectful. I grabbed the purse from her and said, "No."
What?
Catherine's expression changed. It wasn't so much that she was upset about the purse being taken back, she was furious that her daughter-in-law had dared to defy her. Still, I stood my ground and said, "I'm not ready to decide what to do with my mom's belongings. We'll share things with close family when the time is right." Catherine's face flushed with anger.
What are you saying? Are you calling me a stranger?
"You just said that even Michael is a stranger to my mom during the funeral. If he's a stranger, how can you be considered close family, Catherine?" I couldn't stop myself from snapping back. Both Michael and John turned red with anger.
What are you saying? Apologize to my mom.
As a daughter-in-law, how dare you be so rude?
The commotion had gotten so loud that everyone else came rushing in from the other room.
We went out of our way to attend the funeral and the cremation, and now you're calling us strangers? Let's go home, John.
Catherine shouted at me in front of everyone, then stormed out of the houses with John in tow. For some reason, Michael was also angry and left with them.
What happened? Did you really call Catherine a stranger?
My brother and the others, who had only heard Catherine's side of the story, questioned me. I knew that, taken out of context, it probably sounded like I was being cruel. But I explained everything to them. Not a single person blamed me.
Grandma and Grandpa should have been more considerate of others' feelings.
Yeah, but Dad's the same. That whole family has always been like this.
Even my kids stood by my side, but I still couldn't bring myself to forgive the three of them. Michael didn't come home for a while after that. I didn't reach out to him either. I didn't feel like I should apologize, and even if he apologized, I wasn't sure I could forgive him. But I also knew we couldn't go on like this forever. One day, Michael returned. "Welcome back." Seeing his face made my anger flare up again, but I suppressed it and greeted him. Then Michael said,
It must have been tough on you.
his words were blunt, but the fact that he showed some concern for me left me speechless.
Why don't you go on a trip with the kids? It might be good for you.
With that, he handed me some travel vouchers. I was so stunned that I couldn't say a word. Instead, tears started streaming down my face. Maybe the kids had convinced him to do this. But even so, I was happy that Michael had gone along with it. As he suggested, I called the kids right away and we started planning the trip.
Really? Dad suggested that?
Wow, that's rare.
The kids were surprised by my suggestion. So it seemed like the vouchers were really from Michael. Do you think Michael actually feels bad for how he acted? I laughed as I said it. Thanking him, I accepted the travel vouchers from him. "I'm going to go now."
Yeah, take your time and relax. Before the vacation, go stay at the kids too.
"What? I can't be away that long."
It's fine. I'll just relax at my parents' place, so don't worry about me.
Michael said as he sent me off. Since Anna was happy to have me visit, I stopped by her place and then visited Samuel's before the trip. I hadn't been able to visit them at all while caring for my mom, so I made some homemade meals and froze them, helping with a bit of their housework.
Mom, you're supposed to be resting, but this is really helpful. Thank you.
Both of them were thrilled to have some home-cooked meals. I owed it all to Michael for suggesting the idea. And then, the long-awaited trip. I spent the time relaxing with my kids, and it felt like a much-needed break from the exhaustion of caregiving and the grief of losing my parents. We were away for nearly a week, but when it was time to head home, both of the kids left with bright smiles on their faces, heading back to their own places.
That was fun. I guess we should thank Dad for this once in a while.
Yeah, once in a while. But I wonder if he's up to something.
Anna joked with a laugh. "Don't say that. Michael really put some thought into this." I laughed too. On the way back, I looked forward to sharing stories about the trip with Michael and was excited about building a happy life together as a couple again. But when I got home, I was left speechless. "What is this?" "The house." I looked around in a panic, making sure I was in the right place. There was no doubt this was the familiar location, but the house that had been there was gone. Then, out of nowhere, Michael appeared. Behind him were his parents. They were smirking at me as I stood there in shock. "Michael, what is this? What happened?" I demanded an answer. With the same unsettling grin as his parents, Michael said,
Finally, the burden is gone. Starting today, I'm living here with my parents.
"What are you talking about?" I responded calmly to his arrogant tone. Then Michael opened his mouth again.
Don't you understand? I had your family's house torn down. Now hurry up and bring the inheritance here.
Whatever you inherited belongs to Michael now.
I understood everything. It was Michael's doing, and all for the sake of my inheritance. After thinking I was coming home to a fresh start, this was a betrayal beyond words. I was devastated and furious. But no matter what they did, I wasn't going to let Michael have his way. Absolutely not. I couldn't help but burst out laughing at the three of them grinning like that. Once I started, I couldn't stop, laughing uncontrollably, while John and Michael looked at me with puzzled expressions.
What's so funny? What's wrong with her?
Has she lost it?
Catherine stared at me like I was some kind of strange creature. I finally spoke up, addressing the three of them. Don't you know?
Know what?
I looked directly at Michael and said, I didn't inherit a single cent, so there's no inheritance at all. After saying that, I burst out laughing again. Maybe they thought I'd become rich off the inheritance. I couldn't stop laughing at these three who imagined it all and acted on their own assumptions.
What? What do you mean? Explain yourself.
Michael shouted, but I kept my mouth shut. I didn't owe them any explanation. Before that, I won't be living with strangers. If you want to live together, feel free to do it by yourself. Ignoring Michael's question, I rejected the original proposal. This sent Catherine into a rage.
You helped with your mom's housework, but you can't do ours?
You know full well there were special circumstances.
I moved in with your mom, didn't I?
I told you I didn't need you to live with us. You chose to live there because you didn't want to help with chores. Did you forget that? Michael and Catherine bit their lips, struggling to respond as I fired back at them. And tearing down my family's house without permission. There are things you can and can't do. I yelled at the three of them, then turned and walked away.
Where are you going?
Michael's voice followed me, but I didn't look back. I needed to find a place to stay tonight and had no interest in seeing his face ever again. I immediately consulted a lawyer. It wasn't easy to demolish a house just like that. The house was still in my mother's name. When I asked which company had done it, I uncovered an unbelievable truth. It turned out Michael and John had taken the house down themselves. They got help from one of John's friends who worked in demolition, rented the heavy equipment, and had it all planned out. They even gave me travel vouchers just to get me out of the way. I felt tears well up from how foolish I had been and the overwhelming sense of betrayal. Is there any way we can punish them for this? I asked through my tears, and the lawyer gave me a gentle smile.
Since they demolished a property that was still under your mother's name, Michael can be charged with destruction of property, and you can sue for damages. Let's start by getting them to formally apologize.
I nodded in agreement. The lawyer quickly took action. And within days, Michael was calling me in a panic.
What's this letter about?
Oh, it arrived? Well, you destroyed my family's house, so you'll need to compensate for the damage.
Compensate? We told you we were moving in, so we did you a favor by tearing down a house no one was going to live in. You should be thanking us, not asking for compensation. Now stop messing around and come home with the inheritance.
Michael arrogantly replied, Thank you for tearing down my house. Don't make me laugh. And as for the inheritance, how many times do I have to tell you I didn't inherit anything? I shouted into the phone. Michael went silent, clearly taken aback. He wasn't used to hearing me raise my voice. The reason I laughed when the house was demolished was because of this. I spent a whole year with my mother. Of course, we had talked about the inheritance. And I told her, I don't need anything. let my brother Charles have it all. So Charles inherited all the cash and assets. My brother said that if that was the case, I should take the house. He lived far away and couldn't manage it. Even if I didn't live there, I could rent it out. So I was set to inherit the house. Either you and John fix the house back to its original state, or if you can, you'll pay the amount listed.
This amount is ridiculous.
I'm being nice by offering a settlement, but if you can't pay, I'll file a police report and take you to court, I said firmly.
I'm sorry. I didn't think you'd be this mad.
Of course, I'm mad. Michael started mumbling excuses. It seemed he believed that as long as the house existed, he wouldn't be able to live with his parents. John had always wanted to live with us, especially since he liked Samuel and wanted to be closer to him. Michael was the one who had refused to live with them because of the commute, but his parents thought I was the one objecting. That's why Michael figured he could tear down the house and convince me to move in with his parents, forcing me to comply. But hearing this now didn't make it any easier to forgive him.
So, please, forgive me. We didn't mean any harm. Even my dad regrets it.
If you really regret it, then accept the settlement, I said and hung up. Michael kept calling and sending me messages, apologizing over and over. If you're really sorry, then pay up already. I coldly brushed him off. I knew the houses couldn't be restored, but I needed to channel my frustration somehow. After that, I stayed with Anna. Both my brother and my children knew what had happened.
I won't interfere, but I'm here to help. Do whatever you need to do, Michelle.
Even though he must have been furious about the house being destroyed, my brother gave me his support. Everyone sided with me and condemned Michael's actions. A month passed without any compensation or damages being paid. During that time, Michael didn't reach out. I couldn't keep staying at Anna's forever. I needed the money to at least set up a stable foundation for my life. But something completely unexpected happened, contrary to my hopes. And it all came to light with one comment from Anna.
This apron kind of looks like Grandma's, doesn't it?
She muttered as she showed me her phone screen. I stared at the screen in shock. It was a product listing on a resale app. The apron Anna was referring to wasn't just similar, it was the one-of-a-kind apron I had made for my mom. What? This is Mom's apron. I made it myself. There's no mistake.
What?
Anna immediately began checking other listings on the app. The seller had just recently registered with no sales or reviews yet. There were already about 30 items listed, and to my surprise, every single one of them belonged to my mom. I realized it immediately. I knew it had to be Michael's doing. He was the only one who had access to my mom's belongings during the demolition. I called Michael right away. Hey, what's with that app? What's going on?
An app?
Michael said, sounding annoyed. I thought he was trying to play dumb, and my anger flared up. Don't act clueless. You're selling Mom's belongings without permission. Take down the listings immediately. Michael, suddenly flustered, replied,
What? No, it wasn't me.
Who else would do something like that? I'm coming over right now to get everything back. I hung up and headed straight to Michael's parents' house with Anna. Where are Mom's things? As soon as we arrived at Michael's parents' house, I called for him. When he came to greet us, I confronted him right there at the entrance.
I don't know.
Dad, tell the truth.
Anna stood by my side, backing me up as she accused Michael. Michael looked completely cornered. Just then, his parents, noticing we were there, came to the door.
Oh, Anna, you're here?
Catherine smiled brightly, clearly happy to see Anna. But Anna, visibly angry, turned to her and said,
Grandma, tell Dad to tell the truth.
The truth?
The things that belong to Grandma, Dad's selling them online.
Catherine laughed at Anna's words, while Michael furrowed his brow in frustration, repeatedly insisting, "It wasn't me." Then, to our surprise, Catherine cheerfully announced,
Michael's selling them? No way.
But
Because I'm the one selling them.
I felt the blood drain from my face. Michael's expression showed he knew about it. And now he was panicking, glancing nervously at Catherine. Anna stood there stunned, while Catherine remained as upbeat as ever. What?
It's a lot of work, you know? I have to make sure everything's packed nicely and take good pictures.
It was clear Catherine had no sense of guilt about selling stolen items, as she happily described the process of selling things online. I had to hold myself back from losing it.
take down the listings. You can't just sell Grandma's things like that.
Anna, now red-faced and on the verge of tears, pleaded with her. But Catherine seemed annoyed.
What's the big deal? I finally found a fun hobby. I'll keep what I can use, and the rest I can sell for some extra cash. Plus, it's a good way to stay sharp at my age. Now that it's just me, don't you want me to stay happy and healthy, Anna?
She said it so casually, without any remorse. Even though I begged her to stop, she showed no sign of remorse. But if she wouldn't listen, I had no choice but to take action. Come on, Anna. We're leaving.
But
Let's go. I pulled Anna out of the house, and we headed straight to the police station. I hadn't planned on filing a report for the house being destroyed, but theft was a different matter. When I reported to the police that my mother's belongings had been stolen and sold without permission, the resale app quickly took action and Catherine's account was suspended. I was relieved knowing that the items would no longer be sold. On the way back from the police station, I called Michael. I had Catherine's account suspended. You knew about it too, didn't you? That makes you just as guilty.
Wait,
Also, I filed a police report about this. I expect your full cooperation in the investigation. Michael panicked at my words.
but we're family. Please, drop the charges.
We're strangers, remember? And you still haven't paid the damages or compensation for destroying the house. You've shown no remorse. As I shouted at him, Michael fell silent. But I wasn't entirely heartless. Despite my anger toward his parents, I still had some attachment to Michael after all these years of living together. I sighed and said, I'll wait for the money, but I'm not forgiving the theft. I want everything back. And by the way, John doesn't look well. Did he see a doctor?
What?
I'm not heartless, so I'm just letting you know. With that, I ended the call. I had seen John earlier for the first time in a while. He barely spoke and looked shockingly thin, even though it had only been a few months. His complexion was more than pale, it was sickly dark. It was obvious he wasn't in good health, but his family seemed oblivious. Catherine was too busy trying to sell stolen items, and Michael was only focused on keeping up appearances with me. They didn't seem to have any concern for others. The next day, I got a call from John. I thought it might be a thank you, but it was the complete opposite.
How dare you treat me like a sick man? Are you trying to shove me into a hospital and get rid of me? I have to protect Catherine and Michael from you. I'm never going to a hospital.
He was furious. I'd been worried about him, and this was the thanks I got. I'm sorry if I overstepped. I was just concerned.
Humph. I'm not weak or short-lived like your parents. Don't insult me.
That comment made me angry, but a few days later, it seemed like he even realized something was wrong and he went to the hospital. The diagnosis was terminal cancer. Michael called me in a panic.
Dad's got terminal cancer. What should I do? I
But I just scoffed. How should I know? Do you remember what he said when I told him to see a doctor? He said, I'm not weak or short-lived like your parents. Let him handle it himself.
But, Michelle, how could you be so heartless?
Heartless? Who's really heartless here? Did you offer me any comfort when my mother was sick? Maybe it's time to reflect on your actions. With those words, I hung up the phone. As expected, John passed away soon after. I didn't want to harbor negative feelings toward someone who had died, but when I thought about everything he had done and said, not a single tear came to my eyes. After John's funeral, a will was discovered. For all his talk about not being short-lived, it was clear John had made thorough preparations.
The house goes to my grandson, Samuel. The remaining assets are to be split between my wife and my son.
I was surprised to see Samuel's name mentioned. It made sense, though John had always favored Samuel and had long expressed a desire to live with him. Even after his death, he wanted Samuel to inherit the house. But for Samuel, it was nothing but a burden. You should refuse the inheritance. You don't need that house. I told Samuel that, but he was happy to inherit the house. It would come with inheritance taxes, so there wasn't any real benefit for him. Although I initially thought it was an unwanted burden, if Samuel was happy to inherit the house, there wasn't much for me to say. As per John's will, Samuel inherited the house. Catherine was thrilled and paid the inheritance tax.
He's our heir, after all. It's only natural.
Well, she wasn't wrong about that. I felt a little down, as if Samuel had been taken from me. But then something unbelievable happened.
Come over right now.
I rushed to Michael's parents' house after getting a frantic call from him. When I arrived, there they were, Catherine and Michael, standing in shock, just like I had once stood. In front of their house were trucks from a demolition company, complete with heavy machinery and workers. Their house was being torn down right before their eyes. What's going on?
It's my house. I can do whatever I want with it.
From out of nowhere, Samuel appeared, watching the demolition with a satisfied look on his face.
Samuel, what are you doing? Stop this right now.
Why? It's not like you were going to live here.
Samuel, how could you do this to us?
Catherine and Michael cried out to Samuel, but he just smiled.
Did you forget what Grandpa and Dad did to Mom's house?
Samuel,
And Grandma, you were terrible to Mom too. Did you ever apologize for that?
Samuel's smile vanished, and his gaze became sharp as he glared at Catherine and Michael. Both of them dropped to their knees. Meanwhile, the heavy machinery continued its loud destruction of their house. Watching it all unfold, I finally felt a sense of peace. Afterward, Michael paid the damages and compensation with the inheritance money. Samuel had also recovered the items Catherine had stolen from my mother, and they were safely returned to me.
Mom, you have me and Anna, so don't worry.
Those words brought tears of relief to my eyes. Catherine and Michael lost their home, and with no money left on hand, they are now living in a company apartment again. Michael and I had left the company housing, but now he's moved back with his mother. People are gossiping, wondering what happened. One of Michael's co-workers' wives, whom I was friendly with, told me about the rumors. I explained everything honestly. They would likely have a hard time living there from now on, but they had brought this on themselves. On top of that, once Michael retired, they would have no place to live and would have to save up to prepare for the future. I will ask my friends how the two of them are doing, just as a curiosity. While I was still living with Anna, Samuel announced that he was getting married. He also planned to build a house. Apparently, the land where John's house once stood sold for a decent amount, and even though it was a troublesome inheritance, it ended up being useful after all.
Mom, why don't you come live with us?
Samuel also told me. His soon-to-be wife was also very welcoming, and I was extremely grateful. I couldn't stay at Anna's house forever, and now I had a new family to live with. As I moved forward, I made a promise to myself I would never become a mother-in-law like Catherine. I planned to live a happy life with my new family.